many sports, despite some very encouraging work from the International Olympic Committee we've had in the last few weeks, still persist in allowing men to compete against women in women's sports. Well, someone has decided they're going to do something about it. That woman, of course, is Sharron Davies, the Olympic medalist swimmer, author of Unfair Play, The Battle for Women's Sport, and now the new co-founder of Women's Sport Union. A very good afternoon to you.
Look. There we are. Look, there's our lovely logo.
Yeah, baby. That's what we like to see.
Yeah, Women's Sports Union. And the lovely Tracy Edwards, who you didn't mention there, is my co-founder.
Yeah, the Round the World Yacht Woman.
Fame, absolutely.
I have to say, I pity the men who are going to go, or the men who think they're women, going to come up against you two women, because well, I reckon you're a force to be reckoned with. Tell us why you're doing this, because we had this Supreme Court ruling and we all went, job done.
No, absolutely, job not done. So we desperately want people to come and either donate or join as members, private members, donate anonymously if you want to, but come and help us so that we can fight back, because there are still 34 sports here in the UK that are not protecting the female category. And when we say not protecting the female category, we're talking about grassroots, we're talking about juniors, we're talking about recreational. So 1% the elite is the compromise that they've made, so these women over here are good enough, we might protect them, but all these women over here, they're not good enough, so we're not going to protect them. And that is the bit that's just grossly unfair. I was so upset this morning, the BBC, typical, right? The UK Cycling have brought out a list of the 100 most inspirational female cyclists in this country. And their story was all about the 4 women that had a problem with that. Not the 96 that didn't, but the 4 women that went, oh, well, we can't have this, can we? Because there's no men on this list. And it's like, but cycling is such a male-dominated sport. Here are these amazing women that are promoting women's cycling. Please, let's just celebrate them.
But also, wasn't it our women cyclists who actually were pretty instrumental? I mean, I think it was last year, and they're the ones who said, we just won't compete then if you're going to have men competing. Because you made it very clear, the male advantage is the fact that women have pelvic bones and bodies designed to create babies, and therefore we don't have that straight angle over the pedals. That's my excuse for being a rubbish cyclist. Anyway, I'm using it forever. But there's a clear male advantage for cycling, as there is in virtually every sport. Every sport. And therefore the women just went, we won't compete then, and they basically called the bluff of the organisers. But there is a lot of people saying, why don't the women and the girls, whether it's school sports, county sports, whether it's the park run or whatever it is, why they say, why don't the women just refuse to play? What's the answer to that?
Because, Julie, they are so intimidated into this, and they are so browbeaten with the be kind, and no one is being kind to the female athletes. Yep. And the CEOs of these organisations, it is their job to uphold the law. So you mentioned the Supreme Court ruling. That is the law, no guidance that hasn't been issued yet. Yeah. The law is the law right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to remind these organisations that they are responsible for protecting the female category. They cannot keep shirking their responsibility. They cannot keep being frightened of a DEI officer with purple hair on their board. They, as the CEOs, need to stand up for the law. And if they won't do it, we will start going after the individual CEOs who aren't doing their jobs. We will also...
And will that be in the civil courts, in criminal courts? What?
So initially it's just going to be to say to them, look, it's your responsibility to do this. So we're going to try and do this in phases, right? We don't want to take people to court. Of course we don't. We just want people to do what they're supposed to be doing, abiding by the law. And also what they're also not doing is that their insurance is null and void. So if they're not abiding by the law, the public liability insurance no longer will hold up in court. So that also needs to be emphasised to them, which is one of the reasons why the FA decided to protect the female category, okay? So we need to point all these things out, and we're going to ask nicely yet again for people to do what they should be doing, and we're going to pinpoint those whose job is absolutely to apply by the law. Yeah. And then if we can't get them to do things without going back into the courts, which we've seen so many women have to do, then that's what we will do.
And that's where you need funds, you need the support, you need people. I mean,
we've seen that. We need people to help us so that we can be this
support it. I mean, I'm sure one J.K. Rowling would surely be willing to help you. She's been a fantastic supporter of this. But this is the thing. Often when this is framed as a debate in media, and again, BBC being always the worst offenders on this, it's always framed as some poor, they say trans woman, so a poor man who often is completely intact, no puberty blockers, nothing, but a man who claims he's a woman who was average in the male sport, now doing quite well in the women's sport, what, a big 6 foot and having testosterone and having gone through male puberty, what a surprise, beating a load of 5 foot tall women. But how this person is being forced out of sport. And it's always framed in that way, as opposed to...
And they're not.
But the point is actually, for every one supposedly trans-identified athlete who's forced out, which they're not, because they can go and play against the men that they are also. But it's the number of women and girls who are forced out.
So women and girls are self-excluding. We know this on a huge number. Rather than actually be up against boys or feel like nobody's got their back or they're having to change in a changing room with a man standing in the corner watching them, they are literally just they stop doing it. And so the exclusion is women from women's sport, women and girls. I mean, you know, I had a father who had a daughter who played football, and she was 15 years old, and because she was made to play against boys, she was self-harming. And I said to him, why don't you do the other fathers feel the same way? And she said yes. I said, so why don't you come together and just say no? And he said, well, I can't. We can't do that. We're worried about the comeback on our daughters. And you just think, oh my goodness. So if that's you, please, we will be your mouthpiece. We will do all the hard work. Come and support.
You can do it. Come to us. We'll keep it anonymous. It won't be that John Smith,
totally anonymous,
Kelly's dad said this. But this is the thing. And again, I've said to you before, I always thought that once the dads got involved when it came to their daughters, whether it's the change rooms, but particularly on sport, the men would go, yeah, we're not bothered with this. I do think women, a lot of women, obviously I don't suffer from it, worry about people thinking they're nice people as opposed to doing the right thing. But doing the right thing by women, but doing the right thing by your own daughter. Come on, this is bare minimum stuff.
What we really have to understand is that in the world of sport, women have 5% of the sponsorship dollar, right? We have this tiny, tiny piece of the cake.
Barely any of the coverage.
Every story in a national newspaper for women's sport, there are 20 for men.
Yeah.
So we have this little tiny space, and then we're told we're not even allowed to have it fair sport anymore.
Yeah.
Men would never put up with their sport being removed and being told that they can't.
And by the way, the trans-identified women who believe that they are men or dress as if they're men, weirdly, are not forcing their way into men's sport. Why would that be?
Nearly 900 medals we can show at the moment that have been won in elite sport by men identifying as women. And most of those are in sport where there's a big financial benefit.
What a surprise. But this is the thing. People say, oh, it's only a few people. Why don't you just be nice? And it's not just a few people. It's on a
and it affects everybody, you know, from grassroots up. So we also find, like in recreational sports like golf and tennis, where you've got club competitions, what happens is that they turn up and these club ladies find they're all of a sudden being made to play against the man and they just don't want to do it. So they just stop going.
Yeah.
So it has to be at every level, because it isn't very fair to say elite women are worth protecting, but the rest of women are not.
We are hoping, of course, what Donald Trump did, people could be fans of Donald Trump or not, but what Donald Trump did in terms of protecting girls' sport, in schools, universities, and he said very clearly, you know, to the International Olympic Committee, when the Olympics come over to LA, we're just not going to be letting the trans athletes in. And the IOC is basically folded. And that's one of the reasons they folded. As soon as you stand up to these people, you've got the public on your side, you've got biological reality on your side, and you've got fairness on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, isn't it disappointing, though, 10 years ago, you know, the IOC threw women's sport away against all of the known science. They literally turned around and said their stance was, we do not accept that there's any biological advantage to being male. That's what their stance was 10 years ago. And yet we've got every result ever in the whole of history to show us that.
Absolutely. Can I just check? Crazy. I'm going to put it out on Twitter, but he sent it to me, WhatsApp me. But in terms of so this is Women's Sports Union. Where can people find you to help out and contribute and maybe get you to help?
You'll find us online. We're popping up now straight away the moment you put us in, Women's Sports Union, or you can look at my Twitter as well and you'll find me there and you'll direct us there. But you'll find us.